Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I just have to say it's funny that you clap for the Dancing with the Stars, but not the Olympics. Thank you for having me here today. It's such an honor. This is such a beautiful, beautiful place. And I do have to say my greatest condolences to the most wonderful woman, Nancy Reagan. You guys, are you as excited to be in this place as I am? Is it your first time being here? No? It's my first place. I'm kind of like geeking out a little bit. I was born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. If you didn't know a little bit about me, competed at the 2008 Olympic Games. I was 16 years old. I was a junior in high school. I won 4 Olympic medals, 3 silver and a gold. The 3 silver was in the all-around, the floor, the team. It's hard to remember anymore. And the gold is on the balance beam. I started gymnastics when I was 3 years old. I was this little kid that ran around my parents' house, and my parents thought I was going to kill myself because they would catch me jumping off the entertainment center or scaling walls or doing really weird things as a little 3-year-old. So they ended up putting me in ballet class to start, and they ended up getting so many complaints from my ballet instructor that I still wasn't listening, and I had way too much energy, that they had to find something else. And so they found gymnastics. And when I was in my diaper and leotard, I fell in love with the trampoline and kind of never looked back. So every year I just kind of kept asking my parents to please let me go back to gymnastics, and fell in love with it, and it kind of took off, I guess. But when I speak to kids, I mostly speak to college kids, which you guys are transitioning into, some of you. The one thing that I always talk about is kind of like the defining moment in my life and my career, and how it's kind of shaped who I am, and that, of course, is the Olympics. How many of you maybe watched the 2008 Olympic Games? Kind of, sort of, maybe. How about 2012? Did you guys see Michael Phelps, Gabby Douglas, all those crazy, amazing Olympians? Yeah. So the Olympics are an incredible stage. It's the most kind of world-known public stage that you can work towards to be a part of kind of an Olympic team, I guess, or the United States team. I first watched the Olympic Games when I was, I think, like 8 years old. I remember watching the 2008 Olympic Games, and falling in love with the red, white, and blue leotard. It had nothing to do with the Olympics and everything to do with the leotard. So my dream at 8 years old was to get a red, white, and blue leotard with the USA emblem on it and the flag. That was everything to me. So I started training, and fast forward a little bit, I was 15 years old. I was getting ready to kind of progress into Olympic trials and Olympic selection. And up until that moment, I kind of started to make a name for myself in the sport of gymnastics. I was undefeated world champion. I had been competing for the United States from the time I was 12. So when I was 12, I won that first red, white, and blue leotard and thought I was on cloud 9, thought I was God. But I had been competing for about 3 years, and I was kind of the girl to beat. Now, the big thing that I always talk about with the Olympics and with my movement, my career, my journey is expectations. How many of you feel like you have expectations on yourself? Your parents have expectations on you? Teachers have expectations on you? Anybody? Kind of, sort of? All of you should have hands up, because I know everybody has expectations on themselves. But going into the Olympics, the entire world had expectations on me. And how did I know this? I was that girl that read every article, every tweet, every Facebook post, watched every news kind of story that they did on me, and I was the it girl. I was titled America's Sweetheart, which puts a lot of pressure on a person, and I was predicted and expected to go into the Olympic Games and wipe the floor clean. I was supposed to come home with 5 gold medals, and it was almost like it wasn't a choice. They were like, she's gonna come home, she's gonna have 5 Olympic medals, they're gonna be gold, she's gonna be like the greatest thing that's ever happened. And I read all this, and it put a lot of pressure on me. I hadn't even qualified to the Olympic team yet, and they were saying all these things. So fast forward into Olympic trials. I had the best meet of my entire life, qualified and was named to the Olympic team, which was another moment that made me feel like God. I was like, this is it. I've made it to the top, and I'm only 16 years old. So I get the other red, white, and blue leotards. I get the whole outfit. I'm given my plane tickets, my itineraries, everything. I start to read the news articles again, and it's like they took the 5 Olympic gold medals to another level. They're like, she's gonna wipe the floor and bring home 50. It's not even possible. I could only win 5. Like, I only competed in 5 events. But the 5 Olympic gold medals were kind of what everybody was talking about. I was the team captain, I was the team leader, I was the youngest girl on the team, still America's sweetheart, the girl that was going to take USA all the way to Beijing and back and make our entire world proud. A lot of pressure. So I go into the Olympic Games, I'm competing, I'm doing really well, I'm practicing, getting ready for that first competition that you guys get to watch on NBC. And I walk in, and the first event that I compete on is the all-around competition. Does anybody know what the all-around is? Maybe? So the all-around in gymnastics, there's 4 events for women. It's the vault, the bars, the beam, and the floor. The all-around is where you compete on all 4 events. You accumulate your scores and add them together, and it's the accumulative score that places you in rank order. They title it, and this is kind of cliche and kind of weird, but they title it the most prestigious competition of the Olympic Games. No pressure again. So I go into the all-around, and this is what I've been training for my entire life. I was always known as an all-around athlete, meaning I wasn't particularly good on each individual event, but overall I could outrank everybody. So I go into the all-around, and I'm warming up, getting ready to compete. I see everybody doing the same. Go up to my first event, which is vault. Salute to the judges. By the way, a little fun tidbit for the Olympics. Have any of you ever seen a vault runway? It's 70 feet long with like a big thing at the end. Well, something that they threw in at the last second to the Olympic Games that we had never experienced before is like when you start at the runway and you like start running down, they put a camera there on like a motor. It's almost like a motorized car, whatever. And so when I started running, this thing like ran with me. So weird. And you could hear it like speed up, it's like, and like if you slowed down, it slowed down. So it totally threw us off. It was like racing it down the runway. But I went up to vault, vaulted, did really well. Moved on to bars, did the same thing, saluted, did a great routine, finished, stuck my landing, great performance, felt good. I now move on to beam, salute for beam, do beam routine. Beam was one of my better events. Finished it, did really well. Now, up until the Olympic Games, my coach had kind of taught me this technique when it comes to competing. I was never allowed to watch my competitors or to look at my scores. His reason for that being, you can never control what a judge or opinion gives you or what they think of you. You can only control your performance. And so his rule in not being able to look at the scores is he didn't want someone else's subjective opinion to affect how I felt about myself or my performance. So he said, you can look at the scores when you're done, but not in the middle. So I had done this my entire career, never looked at a score in my entire life. Finish beam, get ready to go on to my very last event of the all-around competition, and I don't really know how to explain it other than I had this just consuming feeling, gut feeling, kind of that like conscious, like your insides are telling you something, and it took over who I was, and it basically told me I had to look at the score. Don't know why, couldn't tell you, but for some reason at that Olympic Games, at that moment, for the first time in my career, I looked at the score. Bad idea. I didn't listen to my coach. I remember looking up at my score and kind of seeing where I was in rank order for the all-around. And because I had studied my scores so much after competition, and math was my favorite subject in school growing up, I kind of knew the science of my sport. I knew the numbers. So I knew after a third rotation, after 3 kind of great performances, where I should be in rank order, which should be within 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th place. Because floor is a great, strong event for me, and I can come back up to 1st. And I remember looking at this rank order, and it's on this huge, huge screen. It's like as big as this wall. And on the first screen that pops up, they rank 1st through 8th. And it's in like big letters, it's like, makes you feel cool. And I'm like looking at it, I'm like, okay, where's my name? And I go 1st, no, it should be like 3rd or 4th. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, not there. Kind of have a little mini heart attack. 5th, not there. 6th, not there. 7th, 8th, not there. Not on the board. Literally feel like I got like stabbed in the heart. I was like, okay, don't panic. Keep it together. So then you wait for the score to like switch over. And when it switches over, it turns into like fine print. because it lists 9th through like 150th. And so I'm like squinting, trying to find myself, and I'm in 10th place. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. You know, I've studied the scores, I've done really well, I didn't give the judges anything to kind of take away. What happened? So exactly what my coach taught me growing up my entire life, don't let the scores affect you, it affected me. So going into the last event, I remember panicking, thinking, what do I do now? If I can't win, all of these people who have all of these expectations on me, I'm going to let down. So I try to like put that out of my mind, go to the last event, warm up. I'm the very last competitor in this competition. So that means I have to warm up and sit and wait for everybody in the competition to finish before I can go up. So I sit there and watch one by one the girls go up, and I'm doing exactly what my coach tells me not to. I'm watching every girl and watching their score. So I'm adding it up to see, you know, if I still have a chance. So it comes down to the very last girl before me. She was a United States Olympian as well, my teammate Nastya Lukin, incredible gymnast. I see her go up and I'm like, okay. I feel very conflicted because it's like she's wearing red, white, and blue. I don't want you to fall, but maybe not do your best, you know? I didn't mean that. I adored her, so I'm watching her, and I'm like, okay, I know what her greatest score is. I know what a great performance for her is. If she does an absolute perfect routine, it's going to be really hard for me to win a gold medal. But if she does a good, great routine, I might still have a chance. So I watch her go up. She hits a flawless routine. I'm like, okay, still feeling conflicted. I'm like, kind of, uh-oh, and kind of, this is amazing for the U.S. It's confliction. So the way that the competition works in the last event on the floor, so we compete on a podium similar to this. So when Nastya's finished competing, she does her last pose, she waves to the crowd like you always see. She walks down the stairs as I walk up, and we kind of like cross paths. We like grab each other's hands for like comfort and support because we're like sisters. I go over to kind of like take my position on the floor, and there's this screen where you start. And what's on the screen is Nastya's name, and then this kind of counter, this stopwatch. And so what that is as soon as Nastya's score comes up, this stopwatch has a 30-second timer on it that starts counting down. So what that is telling me is her score is up. I have 30 seconds to start before I'm disqualified. It's kind of harsh, right? So I'm standing there, and basically what that means is as soon as Nastya's score comes up, I have 30 seconds to see her score, to calculate it, to know if I even have a chance before I step on the floor to compete my last routine. So I'm standing there, waiting for the score, kind of like getting really, really, really nervous, trying to stay calm. Her score pops up, and I instantly see her score and know I have no shot to win the gold medal. Because the score that pops up was 0.65 tenths of a point higher than the highest score I had even calculated to make it possible for me to win a gold medal. Does that make sense? Yes? So it was basically like no matter what performance I went out and did, even if I got the perfect score, I could not win a gold medal. So for me, it's a really hard moment to kind of digest. Because what was going on in the big picture is I was standing at the Olympic Games wearing a red, white, and blue leotard, standing on the floor, getting ready to give my last performance, knowing that 50 million people watching live on NBC were being told exactly what I just figured out. So they were being told before I even competed, she's failed. And that was really hard for me to kind of make sense of. Now, meanwhile, this is all going on in 30 seconds. So I'm like trying to think to myself, how do I feel? What do I do? How do I move on from here? So I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, I can't win the gold. I feel like I've disappointed the world. I feel like I've disappointed myself. And then I remember looking over to the other corner of the floor and seeing my coach, who has been with me since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I remember him giving me like this nod, just like he did before every competition, before every routine. And it's almost like, everything's okay, you can go. And I knew he knew what I had just figured out, just as well as the entire world. But he was still acting completely composed and normal. So in an instant, I remember having this thought come through my head, and I remember thinking verbatim, if you can't win the gold medal, at least go out and prove to the world that you deserved it. Don't know how I thought of that in 30 seconds, but I remember thinking of that and walking up to the floor, taking my starting pose, going through this routine. Now, a gymnastics floor routine, it's 90 seconds long. That's the longest it can possibly be. Have you ever sprinted up a hill like this steep for 90 seconds straight? Like sprinted as hard as you possibly could. That's what doing a floor routine is like. It feels like you might die. And it's not the most fun thing to do, but when you're performing it, it makes you feel kind of cool. But you still finish and you're like, I can't breathe, but I'm gonna put a smile on my face. I remember going out into this routine with everything that had just happened. I remember going through these 90 seconds and feeling literally like I was weightless. Like I could have done 10 of these routines back to back to back and not have been winded at all. I don't know what it was, don't know what came over me, but I remember going through this routine, hitting every perfect landing, hitting every perfect leap, every angle, every pose, smiling, feeling weightless, hearing the crowd, and finishing my last kind of pose, just feeling like I had conquered the world. I remember standing up, kind of doing a 360. There was 50,000 people in this arena. They were all on their feet, waving every type of country's flag that you can imagine, and people being genuinely proud and sharing in a moment with me. And I remember for a second kind of doing this 360 and feeling so proud of myself, just like there was nothing more I could have left on the floor, nothing. And so I remember like jumping off the podium, hugging my coach, I'm crying. Have you ever watched the Olympics and seen people cry? Never understood it. I'm like, you're at the Olympics. Shouldn't you be happy? Even if you don't place, like you should be happy, right? And I'm jumping off the podium, I'm bawling, I'm like, I get it now. It's overwhelming. So I'm crying, I'm hugging everybody. As soon as you finish your competition, you kind of get lined up in this corral where you walk to your kind of like the medal podium where they give your medals. I remember standing there knowing that I had received the silver medal. I had not won. And I remember stepping up on the silver podium, being called, like my name being called, and the medal bearer coming over. And I remember, it's like a very vivid memory. I remember him coming over with this beautiful tray, and he's got the silver medal, and he places it around my neck. And as he places it around my neck, normally they always are like, congratulations, you did wonderful. They give you a hug, kiss on the cheek. But I remember when he put the silver medal around my neck, he puts it around my neck and he says, I'm sorry. It takes me back. I'm like, you talking to the right person? I don't know what you're doing. But I remember kind of like not thinking about it, being like, okay, that was weird. So I'm standing there. I see the American flag come down, the anthem being played because Nastia Liukin had won. And whatever country wins, it's their flag and their anthem that plays. So the United States had still won. As soon as you get your medals, you then get put in another corral, and now it's media time, it's press conference. So you go through this corral that's just back and forth. It's like a mile long of just every media and news outlet in the entire world that has showed up at the Olympics to kind of write the story, cover the story. And so this is the first interview. This is the interview that cliche is like, I'm going to Disney World. You know, it's that first thing that people really give you media training for, and you don't want to say anything too crazy. So it's always like, what are you going to do now? I'm going to go to Disney World. That's like the thing. So I'm like, okay, it's the first interview. What am I going to say? What are they going to ask? Where am I going to go? What am I going to eat? So I'm like going to my first interview, take the stands. It's a lady with a microphone and a TV. And I'm like, okay, I'm really excited, wearing a silver medal, on cloud 9. And I remember this lady, she puts the microphone in my face. Don't remember her name, but I remember exactly what she said. I remember her sticking the microphone in my face, and I'm like, okay, what are you gonna ask? Really excited. She goes, so Shawn, how does it feel to lose? Right? I did not have good feelings toward this lady at the moment. So she says, how does it feel to lose? And it's almost like a smack across the face for me. Because in an instant, again, feeling like I was on cloud 9, feeling that pride, watching the American flag come down for still our country, remembering the 50,000 people on their feet in the arena, it all went away. Because in that instant, this lady was confirming to me my biggest fear as a professional athlete. From reading all those news articles, from watching the TV stories, from hearing people, say, you're gonna win everything, and from this silver medal bearer saying, I'm sorry, it made sense. I had failed to the world. I'd come up short, and I had not lived up to their expectations. And that was exactly what that question had told me. And it crushed me. It crushed everything about me, because it felt like everything that I had worked for was no longer worth it or respected. And again, I don't know how I thought of this quickly, but I jumped right back at her, and I was like, I didn't lose. I won the silver medal for the United States of America, and I couldn't be prouder because my teammate Nasty Lucan won the gold medal, just kept going. And I was like, I'm done here. Next question. And moved on. But that was a really huge conflicting moment for me in my career, because from that moment on, every single interview that I went to, it was questions like, how does it feel to lose? What would you have done differently? What did you do wrong? What do you regret? What could you go back and change? It was nothing about pride and excitement and what you've done to get this far and what are you going to do now. It was everything of what went wrong that you came up short. And ever since the Olympic Games, I've thought of this for years and years and years and years. It's been 8 years, which is crazy. And it occurred to me, more so every year, but right after the Olympics, that, we kind of do it all wrong. I remember standing back and kind of watching this all play out as I was being asked all these questions, and watching how every single interviewer and judge and dignitary and United States representative congratulate every single girl on the floor except for the silver medalist. Because if you come in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 59th, 120th at the Olympics, it's like, good effort. If you come in 1st, it's you deserved it, you earned it, you worked for it, congratulations, you're the best. If you come in 2nd, it's you were so close. Had you worked a little bit harder, had you given a little bit more, or not wobbled that little tiny bit on the beam, we're sorry. What could you have done different? Are you going to do 2012? Are you going to go back to the gym right now? And it's all of this, just saddening kind of, humbling moment, because when I left the Olympics and I went on to do public speaking and teach and coach and mentor and do all of these incredible opportunities, I started seeing these patterns in everyday life. So if we go to a soccer game for little kids and a team doesn't really make the championships, but they do well, you congratulate them. You say, okay, you did awesome, but next year we're going to work a little bit harder. If a team goes into a championship and they lose, they're the losing team. They don't deserve the respect. You congratulate the first team, and these are like 5-year-olds. I've witnessed it every day. And for me, what I learned from this moment, going on into business and everything, it's like, for me, because I experienced that, it has nothing to do with titles, honors, and rewards for me anymore. I don't care who approaches me and says, this partnership and this sponsorship is going to make you this much money and give you this title. That doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I was on the biggest stage in the entire world, and I won a silver medal for my country, and I was considered a loser, a loss, a failure. So taking away from the Olympics it's like, I don't care what stage you put me on anymore. It's not going to be about your opinion, what title I earn. The only thing that's going to matter is how I feel and what effort I put out. Something that my coach taught me when I was 4 years old, and I went to him for the first time. He said, okay, the one thing that I teach all of my kids, from the day they start gymnastics with me to the day that they retire and move on, he said, I don't care what anybody tells you, what judge gives you, or what score a judge gives you, nothing. He said, if you can look me in the eye at the end of the practice or the competition and say you could not have given anything more, he said, I will be the happiest coach in the world. And I think that's honestly what we need to teach everybody. but we need to teach high schoolers, middle schoolers, college kids, corporate individuals, and little tykes. I think if we teach them from the start that it doesn't matter what medal you're wearing around your neck, as long as you've given everything and left your heart and soul on the floor, there's nothing more this world can ask of you. So from the Olympic Games, I've transferred that into everything. I then went on to do Dancing with the Stars. And I remember going through that whole competition, really not caring about the Mirrorball trophy, and until I got to the finale. And I'm standing at the finale going through kind of this last performance and routine, getting ready to be named or not named this Mirrorball champion. And I remember having those same feelings again and thinking to myself, just please don't come in second again. And then almost like smacking myself across the face and being like, it doesn't matter. Truly, it doesn't matter. You've gone through this before, you can go through this again, and you can teach the world another lesson. But I feel like the biggest lesson that I had learned, it truly stuck with me. And I then went on to do another show called Celebrity Apprentice. I don't know if you guys watched that show. Didn't do very well on that one. But I genuinely believe I didn't do well on that one because I lived still with the mindset that I had learned from the Olympics. I went into Celebrity Apprentice thinking, I'm going to stay true to who I am. I'm not going to care what the opinions are. I'm going to fight as hard as I can, doing what I know is right, and not playing into what these opinions want me to do. And it worked for me. You know, I didn't win. I got fired on the 4th week, but I had fun, and I learned a lot from it. And I've kept that mentality with everything. So when it comes to speaking to kids like you, and college kids, and anybody of any age, I always say, I don't care what you do. I don't think the world should care what you do. Whether you are a mathematician, a pianist, an Olympic athlete, whether you are the best painter in the world, or you are a missionary, it doesn't matter. As long as you truly have a passion for it and put all of your effort into it, there's nothing more you can do. I feel like the world puts so many expectations on us, especially kids right now, to be the corporate CEOs of companies, to stay into a field that makes you the most money, to tweet the most, impressive pictures, and to be on Instagram and look perfect, and to be on Facebook and to be, falling into the stereotypes and stigmas that the world has kind of put on us. There's so much pressure as a kid these days to kind of follow in the successful footsteps. And I think that's completely wrong. I think if you are truly a kid and an individual that can pave their own path and do something the world has never seen, whether that means looking a different way, and I don't mean like Lady Gaga, I mean just being true to who you are and taking a career path that is different and truly passionate in what you care about, and not making the most money, but making an impact and a difference, and being kind and nice instead of degrading and negative, I think that is what will be the most success when you become older. I think if we still keep feeding into these kind of expectations that the world has on us right now, it's going to be a pretty ugly place in a few years. So for me, talking to kids all the time, I just always ask them to not listen to the expectations anymore. Truly listen to your heart and follow what you love and what you want to do. I remember I got pressured into going back to the Olympics to 2012 to redeem my title, to earn that Olympic gold medal that I'd never gotten. And I fell into it. I fell into that pressure again. I started training. I gave my heart and soul into training. I fell out of touch with my family. I had struck a lot of very negative relationships with corporate sponsors and everybody in my life. Things had just gone very negative, but it's because I was forcing something that wasn't true to my heart. And I remember going into these Olympics, it was a week before Olympic trials. I had 4 or 5 Fortune 500 companies signed to my name, expecting me to make the Olympics and win that gold medal that I never had. I was falling into the expectations, the stereotypes, everything again. And I remember a week before Olympic trials, waking up one day and just feeling like my entire life had been sucked out of me. I remember thinking to myself, this is not who I am. This is 2008 all over again, and I'm not living up to what I teach and I preach. And so I remember waking up that day and making an instant decision to completely get rid of all of it, to let it go. I was already kind of guaranteed a spot on the Olympic team. And the sponsors loved that. It was going to make them a lot of money. And I remember waking up that day and calling my manager and my agent and saying, I'm done. I can't do this. I have to retire. I have to move on. And her having a heart attack. She was like, are you kidding? Like, I hope you're kidding. Sleep it off. It's okay. And I just remember talking to her and then talking to my parents and saying, this is not for me. I remember in 2008, the Olympics were my life. In 2012, right now, I see that passion in the girls I'm competing against, and they're getting ready to give me a spot and take it away from one of them, and I can't do that. It doesn't mean that much to me anymore. So I remember personally calling every CEO of these Fortune 500 companies and having to tell them, just not feeling it. Remember having to, yeah, right? Nike, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, all of them. They didn't take it too well either. They supported me. Every single one of them stuck with me. I wasn't contractually bound to them anymore. I had to give them back everything that they had already given me. But in time, they all saw that I was a completely different individual once I left that Olympic Games. I was back to being the girl that they signed 4 years ago. I was back to being the happy-go-lucky, passionate girl that I once was in my sport, but I was doing something else. And they went on to see that the team that was selected went on to become one of the most successful teams that our country has ever seen. I made a very, very hard decision that day that the entire world did not like. I put out a press release that absolutely murdered me on social media. I had every hater in the world saying miserable things about me. How could I do this to my country? Calling me every name in the book, saying every negative thing you could possibly imagine. But in my heart, it was just like on the floor that day, I felt absolutely weightless. I felt healthy. I felt happy because I was truly doing what I was passionate about again. So again, I reiterate, even though it's not easy, even though it might go against, and I hate to say that, but your parents' expectations and what they want you to be, or your teachers, your mentors, anything, do what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about whatever you're doing, that's where success comes from. If you're not, you're going to force something and fall into a hole that is really hard to get out of. So it's kind of always been my message, especially since 2008. I try to live by it every single day. I do things way out of the norm and turn down opportunities that people think I'm crazy for turning down. But it makes me who I am, makes me unique and happy, and doing things that I truly love, which is like getting to speak to you guys today. So we have about 12 minutes. I always like to do question and answers. I'm hoping, since you guys are like middle school, high school, like no favorite colors. I'm engaged. I'm getting ready to get married. It's always a very common question. You'd be surprised when I go to colleges. They always ask like your favorite color, your favorite dessert. So let's kind of skip over those. How about? So you guys can raise your hand. I know we do have microphones that can come around. Otherwise, if you can project, and you feel like belting it out, go for it. How about you? I think he's coming for a microphone if you want to wait.
So that's loud.
It's okay.
So if gymnastics didn't pan out for you, did you have a fallback career?
I actually did not. So the whole idea of a fallback career or a plan B isn't really something that I believe in. I'm actually going through this with my husband right now because he's in the NFL and he's a rookie, and he wants to have a plan B or a fallback. And I truly believe that you shouldn't be planning a fallback because it takes away your attention from plan A. It doesn't allow you to be fully devoted into what you're passionate about or what you're working on right then. I think everything will work out. I think it takes a lot of hard work. But when I was in gymnastics and training for the Olympics, I could not have told you what I was going to do had I not made it or had I gotten hurt. had that day come, I would have started from ground zero and built up a new world. But no, I'm not a believer in plan B.
Did your parents ever not want you to do gymnastics or were ever against what you wanted to do?
Every day of my career. Were my parents ever against gymnastics or what I wanted to do? Not in the sense that they didn't believe in what I was working for, but my parents, I'm an only child, Des Moines, Iowa, small town. My parents, because they saw how much of who I was giving to my sport, they wanted me to be just like this normal little girl that got to go play with her friends every day. So I would say until I was about 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, they asked me on a daily basis, is this truly what you want to do? Just because I think they would have liked an easier route. But yeah, I mean, they weren't necessarily against it, but they wanted to make sure it was truly what I wanted. What did I do after I decided not to do 2012? Nothing at first. I remember as soon as I had kind of announced that retirement and that I wasn't doing the 2012 Olympic Games, I remember taking like our family's boat out on the lake and like hanging out on the lake for a week, doing absolutely nothing, kind of like pondering life. And it was within that week that I got a call from Dancing with the Stars to do the All-Star season. So, which is something I would not have been able to do had it not been for the retirement. So that was kind of a cool opportunity, and it was something I was passionate about, and I was excited about, so I was like, sign me up. I came in second on that one, too.
How was dancing with Derek Hough?
How was dancing with Derek Hough? Amazing. Derek Hough is a very good friend, so is Mark Ballas, my partner from the first season. But what I always say about Derek is he's a creative genius, literally a creative genius. So working with him is fascinating because you just stand back and his mind just works so differently, but he's awesome. He's a great guy. Yes. Being an Olympic gymnast or just gymnast in general? When I was she asked if in gymnastics, in my gymnastics career pursuing the Olympics, did anybody tell me or ask me to just be realistic? Basically being the naysayers. Yes, many, many, many times. My very first coach that I was with, I was 3 years old, so it was a little bit different. My very first coach ended up telling my parents, because my parents kept asking him, why aren't you working with her? Why do you just leave her on the trampoline all day? And he's like, well, this girl, she has a lot of energy, but she has no talent at all. They told my parents this. My parents weren't very happy. That's why we ended up finding Chow, just because he actually opened his gym a mile from my parents' house, and my parents had to save gas money in order to afford me to still go back to gymnastics. So I moved to Chow and found him, and he was incredible. But I had many people throughout my career tell me that what I was working for and what I was kind of passionate about was so far-fetched and so just unrealistic. They always encouraged me to take an easier route, but my heart just always said no. Yes, people will always work against you when they don't believe in something you do. Nobody's going to share your passion for something. Nobody shared my extreme passion for gymnastics in the Olympics. Even my teammates, theirs was different in some way. So if you're truly passionate about it, you hang on to your belief and your kind of thoughts in your heart, and don't let anybody take that away from you, because a lot of people will try.
How did you balance school while you were practicing and training?
Balancing school and training was probably the hardest part of my career. Going through high school and middle school, it's a very consuming time. There's so much homework, so much pressure to do well. Balancing that with close to 35 hours a week of training was very, very, very difficult. But I think because I learned so well in gymnastics how to be on top of things and to work hard and to have that work ethic, when it transferred into high school, I just did the same thing. I was always that kid that got in trouble because I was multitasking in class. I was doing science homework and math. I would show up to school every day early and work with my teachers and do extra study halls and do volunteer hours and work to get extra credit. I was truly as devoted in high school as I was in gymnastics, and it just seemed like the harder I worked, the easier things got. So it was never about putting things off, which is very easy to do.
How did you deal with all of these people whom were disappointed in your choice?
Great question. Dealing with all of the people that seemed to be disappointed in my choice, I think the way that I dealt with it was ignoring it. I feel like the entire world was waiting for me to validate and verify what they were thinking, which was, as soon as I showed them that I was disappointed, then that gave them reason to be disappointed as well. And I never gave it to them. As much as I was conflicted at the time, I would never allow myself to actually say, it sucks getting a silver medal. Because in my heart, I truly didn't believe that. It was just kind of the pressure of the outside world. So not giving them that validation or verifying that for them kind of put them at ease and started to switch their thinking as well. Yeah.
When you were in school, did you ever have your peers tell you that you wouldn't amount to anything?
Did my peers in school ever tell me basically I was unrealistic? Yes. I was not a fan favorite in school. I was a very, very shy individual. I didn't fit into any cliques. I was by no means a popular girl. I wasn't even a jock. I was kind of that just loner, just because I committed so much of my time outside of gymnastics or outside of school to gymnastics that people couldn't really connect to me. And I wasn't a kid that followed stereotypes and wore the right outfit or said the right thing or went to the football games or the school parties. I was kind of that goody two-shoes and teacher's pet is what people named me as. So yes, every single kid in school was against what I did and didn't believe it and thought that I was just this recreational gymnast that thought a lot of herself. So I had a lot of naysayers, but seemed to work out. And I do have to say, be careful with, a big lesson is truly finding out who your true friends are. I did think it was interesting the day after the Olympics, getting calls and text messages from all those girls and all those friends in high school that wanted nothing to do with me, and they were best friends with me right after. So be careful with that. True friends are hard to come by. Advice for a gymnast now who wants to make it big in the future. I would say the best advice that I could ever give any athlete in any sport, especially gymnastics, is to truly have fun. I feel like it might not be what you want to hear, but I feel like our just kind of society these days puts so much pressure on kids to be that Hall of Famer NFL guy or the Olympic gold medalist, and they strip all the fun that kids used to have in sports. And if I could give you any advice, it would just be to fall in love with your sport, whatever it is. And if you can truly fall in love with it, it makes hard work so much easier to kind of balance and take part in. Either.
How do you think your life would be different if you had won the gold medal?
Great question. How do I think my life would be different had I won the gold medal? I honestly don't believe I would have learned all of these lessons, which I think would be very, very unfortunate. Because I told you I noticed just the observation of if every time you win a gold medal, which I had won a few in my career, everybody tells you you deserved it, you worked for it, this was yours, and praises you. It doesn't force you to kind of look within yourself and to ask yourself, did I really deserve it? Did I really put in enough hard work and effort? Do I have anything to regret? Whereas a silver medal truly does. Because you're not getting that praise from the world, you have to kind of give yourself that if you think you deserve it. So for me, it was just kind of a lot of self-reflection, and I don't think I would have gotten that had I been given the gold.
How did you overcome roadblocks when you were training?
Overcoming roadblocks when I was training. In the simplest way put, I would say roadblocks are just a test of your mental strength. It's a test of your motivation and your end goal and drive. So every time you're forced or a roadblock is put in front of you, I think you just need to re-ask yourself, why did I start in the first place? Is it worth working through? So for me, whatever roadblock was put in my way, it was always like, the Olympics are worth working through this. So it makes the end result that much more gratifying. The second time around? How did I know for myself that Olympic gymnastics wasn't kind of the path I wanted to take the second time around? It ended up being one of those gut feelings again. Because I had the entire world telling me I was doing the right thing by going back to the Olympics and kind of earning that title again, I feel like if someone tells you something enough, you start to believe it, but everybody knows that gut feeling and that kind of just nagging feeling in your heart that something isn't right. And it felt like every single day I woke up and I heard all of these things, I would try so hard to believe it, but it took too much unnatural effort. And it was like the second that I truly accepted not doing it, it felt like everything was easy and right again. So it's just, again, listening to yourself, but it's hard.
All right, we have time for one more question.
So if you had the chance to do it all over again and go for the gold, would you, or are you like content with the silver?
I would never change anything. I know it's a huge statement. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career and in my life. I've come up short many times, but I truly believe you go through everything for a reason, and there's zero that I would go back and change in my entire 24 years, including the Olympics. I think I was meant to earn that silver. So, thank you guys. It's been a joy. Yeah. I have been requested to take a selfie with all of you. So, I don't know if we can fit everybody, but maybe if you guys like all scrunch together, maybe sorta, kinda sorta. There we go.